Optimistic.
Grandpa I never had.
Happy.
Kind. Adventurous.
Amusing.
Funny.
Athletic.
Fatherly.
You were born in former East Prussia, Germany in 1929.
I was born in the same home as my father. The adjacent building was our store, founded by my grandfather.
A very profitable department store that sold everything. Over 50 employees.
I liked it because my cousin and I could play with all the toys once the store had closed.
There were toys at home.
But there were a lot more toys at the store.
Tag.
My fashionable and sophisticated parents and I would vacation on the Baltic. Life was good at that time.
1933.
It was the beginning of the end of that life.
In January, the Nazis came into power. Your family sold the department store for a fraction of the price.
Swang's Verkauf, a forced sale. I can still remember the fighting matches between my mother and my father during the time. Eventually,
They divorced. The law stated in divorce, the son stayed with the father and the daughter with the mother if no one was at fault.
our family was broken apart.
Crystal knocked.
The horror of that night, during and after.
The synagogue where you went to school?
It was burned to the ground.
Your mother remarried and fled to Bogota, Colombia.
I hardly had the time to say goodbye to her.
Your father remarried as well.
Lily. I found it amusing that his new wife's name was the same as my mother's, but that was where the similarities ended. My new stepmother was business-oriented, down-to-earth, and street-smart. One day, on my way home from school, I was beaten up by Nazi kids. Lily decided,
Your new step-grandfather will take you to school every morning and pick you up every afternoon.
Lily also decided.
You are forbidden to leave the house by yourself.
She was firm, but she had to be. She was doing her best to keep me safe. But one day, I heard a military band from outside my window.
The music came closer and closer.
It was irresistible.
You ran 2 blocks to the main square. Crowds lined up, people everywhere.
I waited for the parade to turn the corner. Wow. Trumpets.
Glockenspiel.
Drums of all sizes.
Beautiful black horses.
German Shepherd.
Marching in step.
Flags. Red and black armbands.
Swastikas. And then a terrible moment for me.
Everyone shouted
Heil Hitler.
and raised their arms in the Nazi salute.
When I got home, Lily severely scolded me, with good cause.
Jews were not permitted at parades anymore.
God knows what could have happened to me.
Soon, your father got word there was a place you could go without visas. Perhaps the only place left in the world.
Shanghai? Despite being occupied by the Japanese, German allies, Shanghai was accepting refugees.
We left in July 1939, only 1 month before the war.
We were very lucky to get out. To the adults, it was very stressful, but for me, it was an adventure.
We left on a German luxury ship.
I was 10 years old.
9 relatives.
A 30-day trip. Before leaving, your father sent 500 British pounds to a cousin in London, with the agreement that he would get the money upon his arrival to Shanghai.
We will be in excellent shape, and as soon as we can, we will emigrate to a better place.
That is what my father kept on telling me. The ship was beautiful.
There were parties nearly every night.
A swimming pool.
Stops in
Barcelona.
India. The Philippines.
Hong Kong.
Shanghai.
The first stop your father made was to an American Express office.
Only 100 pounds?
The rest will come later.
Your family rented an apartment in one of the best neighborhoods in the city. Your family opened a small outdoor market.
It's time to begin life anew.
But instead of money, November 1939, it was clear.
No more was to come.
Mood in my home was very grim.
We moved to an apartment in Hongqiu.
A working class neighborhood.
And that winter was very cold.
Brutal, especially for my father, ordinarily a strong man. He always advised me to
Eat well, take long walks, and deep breaths to get a lot of fresh air.
He was shattered.
He had worked so hard to plan for us.
That a relative could betray us was inconceivable to him. He developed pneumonia later that winter and passed away, December 21st, 1939.
You said Kaddish from every day in a small Russian synagogue.
We were devastated.
But I aimed to remain hopeful.
You were enrolled in Kadori school.
I loved it. It gave me a feeling of normal life. The Chinese were great neighbors.
But you kept German traditions.
We cooked German food on a Chinese charcoal stove on the roof. I don't think I had a single Chinese meal the entire time I was there.
You made a friend.
My best friend, Gert, who eventually changed his name to Gary.
Jerry and Gary?
We were inseparable.
Sports?
Religious activities,
Social clubs?
girls. We started off as good students, but began having too many outside interests.
Getting jobs?
Having a good time, girls. We knew we would get bad report cards, so we quit school early.
We worked. You dyeing silk in a weaving factory. The fumes were dangerous.
My hands would turn the color of the dye.
Do you have frostbite?
Blue today. But I still enjoyed myself. I was bar mitzvahed in the same Russian synagogue where I had said Kaddish for my father.
For you.
Lily gave me my father's talit from his bar mitzvah in 1906, which I wore every year on high holidays, and later gave to my grandson Aaron for his bar mitzvah.
You always stayed in high spirits, even during the toughest years.
1943, a Japanese army official decreed. All 108,000 Austrian and German refugees moved to the ghetto.
On cue, most of us lived there anyways.
The jobs and living conditions got worse.
My family lived in a room as small as a closet.
There were no walls or fences, just signs on certain corners.
But if you were caught outside the district without the proper pass,
Swift punishment would follow. Beatings or even jail.
Major Goya oversaw the ghetto. He called himself King of the Jews.
Many refugees stood in line at 5 a.m. trying to obtain passes.
In line all day. Sometimes they fainted under the squelching sun.
and when their turn finally came, Major Goya harshly lectured and humiliated them.
Sometimes withholding their passes out of cruelty.
But the biggest problem was tropical disease.
We didn't have running water or antibiotics.
You got malaria and jaundice.
I had an attack every 6 hours. I could set my watch to it.
Severe hot flashes with a fever.
Or cold, shivering attacks.
It lasted a year.
1945.
The American Air Force began bombing.
B-29! Air raid sirens, usually after the planes had gone by.
But we were never too concerned. We thought the Americans knew we were here.
July 17th, 1945. The U.S. actually
Bombed Hongqiu!
45 refugees and many hundreds of Chinese people killed.
You ran home to find Lily on the roof hanging the wash.
I yelled to her, "Get down!" She stayed up there until
Every last piece of laundry was hung.
I later met some of the pilots and learned that the Americans had been given orders to bomb the ghetto, but waited as long as possible to do so.
One day during an air raid, the Americans dropped a leaflet saying,
Attention Allied prisoners, the end of the war is near.
September 3rd, the end of the ghetto.
Japanese soldiers simply vanished.
But not before Major Goya was thoroughly beaten up by some refugees.
And the Americans arrived soon after with help.
Medicine, food.
Hanukkah go for the children. I began to work for the U.S. Army as a messenger. I even got an army bike.
Which you were very proud of.
When you found out what happened in Europe, you realized
We were the lucky ones.
Soon after the end of the war, I heard from my mother in Bogota.
she wanted you to come to Colombia, but
I have no desire to go. Lily kept me in any way she could, saying,
Stay here. You can stay here with us.
but other relatives pushed me, saying,
Blood is thicker than water.
in 1947, I left for Colombia, leaving my stepmother brokenhearted. She loved me like her own son. I was 17 and one of the first refugees to leave Shanghai. On our way, we stopped in San Francisco. We sailed under the Golden Gate Bridge. Another adventure. It gave me a small but very strong taste of America, which one day became my home. Jerry. And I wasn't alone. That's me, and that's Gary. We stayed best friends for nearly 7 decades.
Above all, and now more than ever, my family brings me joy, and so does my friend Margie. I want to tell you what I often tell my 2 grandchildren, who I love so much, and who are sitting right here, that if I wouldn't have ended up in Shanghai, I wouldn't be here, and they wouldn't either. Thank you.